Well, good afternoon and welcome everyone to our panel presentation of LCIM, Latinx Communities in Missouri. I'm Gerardo Martinez, Director of Alianzas and member of the LCIM committee. This committee was created to ensure that the rich culture, diverse history, and contribution of Latinx communities in Missouri are represented as well in the Missouri 2021 bicentennial celebrations. Today's event, entitled Emerging Latinx Leaders in Missouri, is our fifth of a series that has been held monthly, and our very last one will be the next month. So please make sure that you join us. Today's event, entitled Emerging Latinx Leaders in Missouri, again, is our fifth celebration event. So we want to thank to the LCIM committee for making this possible. These are the Boone County Extension Council, the Hispanic Leaders of St. Louis, MU Cambio Center, MU Extension's Community Arts Program, and UMKC Institute for Human Development Alianzas. And last but not least, we wanted to express our gratitude to our official sponsor, the LIUNA, Missouri and Kansas Labor District Council. So friends, we will end the conversation with a brief Q&A, and also please feel free to submit your questions at any time through the chat. To begin today's event, please help me to welcome our moderator, Gabriela Ramirez Arellano. She is originally from Guanajuato, Mexico. She has a passion and commitment to help others inspired by her own experience growing up as an immigrant in the United States. Now back in the San Luis area, Gabriela finds her voice helping small businesses owners achieve their dreams, acting as the executive director at the Center for Emerging Technologies and director of the entrepreneurship at CORTEX. Through her podcast titled Auténtico, which is the Spanish word for authentic, she empowers and showcases bilingual Latinx professionals and small business owners, and likewise through her work at the Balsa Foundation, where she promotes social equity and prosperity. But that's not all. Gabriela is also an author. She's an author, a marathon runner, and a business owner. So she and her husband owns Don Emiliano's, a Mexican restaurant in O'Fallon, Missouri, and they just celebrated their 6th anniversary since they opened it. She holds a bachelor degree in marketing from the University of Missouri, Columbia, and an MBA from Lindenwood University. She is part of the current Leadership Missouri class and is most proud of raising her amazing children who inspire her to help make the world a better place. So please help me to welcome Gabriela. Thank you again, and the time is yours, Gabriela.
Gracias, Gerardo, and thank you. Thank you to you and to the Latinx Communities in Missouri Committee for the opportunity to have these conversations as we celebrate Missouri's bicentennial. I, for one, am so excited about all the buzz and research about so many things that Latinos and the Latino community are doing across the state and around the growth in our community. The Latinx population in Missouri is changing, as we said in some of our flyers, and today we are talking to 5 Latinx leaders. I'm so excited to get to know them and also to talk to them about what the future holds for us as the demographics change. So during the course of our discussion, we want to have a candid conversation about their successes, challenges, and dreams for the future. So let's go ahead and get started. First, I'd like to ask each of our panelists to share with us who they are, their company and title, and if they're from Missouri, or how is it that they decided to settle here in St. Louis. So we'll start with Miriam Ruiz. Miriam, can you go ahead and get us started, and then we'll go to Edgar.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Miriam Louise. I'm an artist, curator, activist, and educator. I work for Contemporary Art Museum St. Louis as the School and Community Programs Manager. I am also co-founder and currently am vice president of Latinx Arts Network, which we founded about 4 years ago. And I also co-curated with Jose Garza about 2 years ago, Demography is Destiny, which was inspired by Ness Sandoval's work. I believe he was a part of this as well. And that was the first Latinx exclusive group art exhibition in St. Louis. So I'm pretty proud of that. And I was born in Warrensburg, Missouri, then lived all over the world and just happened to move back here because the position at CAM was excellent and I wanted it.
Awesome. Edgar?
Buenas tardes. Thank you for having me here. I'm Edgar Palacios. I run the Latinx Education Collaborative here in Kansas City and its affiliate 501c4 organization, Revolución Educativa. Our work is rooted in increasing the representation of Latino educators in K-12. And I actually ended up in Missouri because of my parents. So my mom is a professor of Spanish, and she taught at Southeast Missouri State. And so I went to high school in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and then I came to Kansas City for college at UMKC. And so I've been here for a little close to 20 years. And so that's how I ended up in Missouri.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Edgar. Laura, what about you? And then Alejandro and Kevin, who are you? Where do you work? And how did you end up here in Missouri?
Well, thank you very much for having me here. I am a musicologist, and I am also an educator and a researcher of Latin American music of the 19th century and its influence in the United States. Since 2019, I've been serving as an elected member of the Boone County Extension Council of the University of Missouri, and I'm presently chairing the Latinx Outreach Committee, and I'm also a member of the Latinx Community in Missouri Committee, the one that organized these and other 5 programs to represent the Latinx in the bicentennial of Missouri, and I'm presently teaching Spanish at the University of Missouri. And I came here because my husband brought me here. And he is faculty at Truman State University. And after living a few years in Kirksville, we decided to move to Colombia. We love Colombia. We're in love with this city.
Thank you, Laura. Alejandro and then Kevin?
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. My name is Alejandro. I was born in Oaxaca in Mexico, a beautiful state, southern Mexico. And I did law school there. I am a licensed attorney. And then I moved to the US, specifically San Diego, to do my master's degree. There, I found the love of my life. And now he moved me to St. Louis, Missouri. Now we're engaged. And my organization is the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I am the membership manager. And there we help small business owners, and we also advocate for the Hispanic community. I volunteer as well in other organizations that help business owners. And I also volunteer in another is called Food Outreach, which provides food assistance to individuals with HIV and AIDS and cancer.
All right. So, hey, everybody, thank you for inviting me. I am Kevin Reyes. I am a structural analysis engineer at Boeing. Specifically, why I'm here presenting at this Emergent Leaders group is I am the president of the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, the St. Louis chapter. So what we do with that is we focus on professional development of young engineers, of college student engineers, and other. Another thing what we do is we focus on high school outreach, student outreach, elementary outreach, and trying to get the students in the Hispanic community, the Latinx community, to engage in science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So it's STEAM now, which we completely embrace, and we try to drive those, drive interest into that because we believe that's really important for young student development and just getting them involved with that type of field. And the last thing that we do in this society is a lot of community outreach. So anywhere that we can help out, we're always looking to help out with other nonprofits or other organizations, anywhere that we can help out within the St. Louis area or surrounding area, we like to help out with that. The last thing that I am also involved with is called the Mustard Seed Project. It's a nonprofit that's centered in O'Fallon, Illinois, which is about a half hour north of here. But we do some kind of similar. We build, it's kind of like Engineers Without Borders, where we build latrines in the northern suburbs, or not northern villages of Guatemala. And we work with SIUE, Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville students to help them develop these engineering projects and then go down there and build them. So.
Thank you, Kevin. Oh my gosh, I see so many common themes already. You all wear a lot of hats. You're very involved in the community and in making a difference. And I mentioned earlier about the growth in demographics and the census data that indicates the trends in the growth of the Latinx community that actually one of our very own, Dr. Nes Sandoval, is very involved in. So Kevin, let me start with you this time, and then Alejandro. What do you feel is your role in leading our community into the future?
Yeah, so I think that fits in with what I'm trying to establish with the SHPE chapter, is really trying to build a community of engineers that we can reach out back to local colleges, local high schools, local elementary schools, and try to get a partner. We've been trying to partner with the St. Louis Science Center. I think I got muted. Yeah, so to continue with that, what I see my role as an engineer and being as a part of this society is to inspire youth to be involved with these science and technology, engineering and math and arts, to really just foster growth and realize the potential that our community has to do something great. And I think that's a very valuable experience and something that could be very fulfilling and inspiring to keep our community engaged and looking forward and being hopeful.
Thank you. Alejandro?
Yeah, the way I see my role in leading the community and in doing this is by empowering others. I think that is an important way, but then also shining a light into issues that are important to tackle. So language access is important, voting access is important, voting engagement is important, and also finding ways that we can create a community that is truly represented and heard. So I think that's the way I just see myself, volunteering and doing things that are going to be helping this generation, but then generations to come, so that they also don't have to suffer from the things that I'm suffering, so that we leave a better community for them. So I see my role as that.
Very good, Alejandro. What about you, Edgar and Laura? How do you see your role in the success of our community's future?
I think critically about the lack of Latino representation in schools and K-12 specifically. And in Kansas City, for context, only 1% of educators in the greater Kansas City metro area are Latino. That translates to roughly 260 Latino teachers in comparison to 51,000 plus Latino students. And so there's a huge disparity gap there that we need to address, that we need to build awareness. Our future teachers are in classrooms today. 1 out of 4 students in this country are Latino in K-12. And that number is going to be 1 out of 3 in about close to 10 years, in less than 10 years. And so we have a responsibility to make sure that our students become educators one day, and that they are also empowered in being authentic and celebrating culture and having the language and tools to represent our community, so they can model the way for our future generations of Latino students.
Thank you, Edgar. Laura?
Yeah, I agree with Edgar. So I believe that, yes, for that future, and right now our children, so we have 1 Latino for every 4 kids might have Latino. And in the future, going to be 1 out of 3. And to me, the future is embracing our identity, to be proud of our culture, to keep language. Language is a heritage. It's a gift that we give to the 2nd generation, to the 3rd generation, and for us to keep. And for me, education, embracing identity, embracing that wonderful culture that we are, and we are outside the United States and within the United States, and to make that visible for America and visible for us, to be proud of that. This is what is going to make us going.
Gracias, Laura. Miriam, what about you? I've seen you in action with your work in the arts, but also in advocacy for some of these needs. Where do you see your role in the future for our community success?
Yeah, so as I said, I work for an art museum, and my role as an educator, as far as that's concerned, has kind of worn a bunch of different hats. But when I first came into the position, one of the things I was particularly interested in was ensuring that we were taking the museum's resources as far as marketing and education, and we were pouring them into communities that had less access. And the truth of the matter is that some of our communities that are not white have a lot less access to things like cultural institutions. That can be for various reasons, but a lot of the times the answers you get is for example, what I felt when I was growing up is I didn't feel comfortable in art museums. I didn't feel like that was a place for myself or my family. So I see as the role that I can contribute is brainstorming ways and programming and thinking of educational ways that I can reach, particularly youth, but adults as well, and granting a welcoming atmosphere, visibility, and access to folks who normally don't feel that they can go into art museums or other cultural institutions like that. And the truth of the matter is that translates into a form of soft power. I think a lot of times people are like, art isn't that important. But the truth of the matter is it is. Our museum showed the work of Guadalupe Maravilla, who was a part of a group show at the Whitney in New York City back in, I want to say 2019, which was the first only Latinx group show that had ever shown at Whitney, which is considered to be the most important American art museum in the entire country. And that took them hiring a Latina curator who pushed to make that show visible. So I think it shows those of us that are in the arts are actually able to contribute a great deal to the visibility of the Latinx community, and also just the actual material benefit that can come from having that exposure, because it translates into our people looking for different jobs, such as being educators and increasing our visibility to young people that are going through our schools and other institutions.
So true, Miriam. And Alexandra Johnson, La Abogada Alexandra Johnson, put in the chat that visibility is essential. And I think you all kind of talked about how important that is in your respective industries and focus areas. Alejandro, I do see a question in the chat for you. So let me go ahead and ask you, how do you see Latinx participation and involvement in the government or even in community council?
I don't see it. That's the problem, you know, and that's the issue. We make around 20% of the U.S. population. 20% of the U.S. population. That's so much. That's so many of us. I think it's around 65 million. And we only make 1% of our elected representatives. So really their representation is not there. And we need to be, as Alexandra just said, we must run for office. That's exactly what we need to do. Because you know, only us, only the community, only the Hispanic community will know how to tackle these issues that are affecting our community, that doesn't let us grow and develop and become you know, more successful that we can be, to fulfill all of the potentials that we have. So I think we need to be more engaged, we need to run, and we need to support campaigns. We need to become more engaged in the voting system, learn about who are the individuals that are running, what are their priorities, and if they are not answering to those priorities, we need to let them know that specifically what we need. So you know, I think there's so much more to do, and it takes all of us to really participate and put effort into changing that.
Yeah, and those are all definitely great conversation starters, right? Because not everybody will run for office, but we can all register to vote. We can all go out and vote. We can all learn about the elected officials and help support them. There's so much work to be done around campaigns for people that support the issues that we're a part of.
And just one last thing, I cannot vote. I'm not eligible to vote yet. But I am aware that these things are important for me because potentially could set barriers for myself. So I volunteer for things for people that are electing, running for office and stuff like that. So even if you're not eligible to vote, you can do so many things for it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm seeing the conversation in the chat, and I think that there's so many ways to get not just the youth involved, but there's so many adults that are not involved, right? And so I think a lot of that just starts with being the example. And as we talk about the future, we also want to talk about the conversations and the issues or priorities that we want to take on. And you guys have mentioned some of them already, right? So what issues do we want to take on and overcome in order to reach that goal? And for each of you, the goal may be different. This is especially important as you all come from a variety of industries. So my question for you all this time is, what do you see as the top 2 initiatives that we should focus on? And I'll open this up to the group, so feel free to unmute yourself. And since Alejandro, since you're highlighted, I'll start with you. What do you think, or what do you see as the 2 issues or priorities that we need to take on?
So specifically, I work for small businesses. I see this entrepreneurship as a vehicle for the Hispanic community to achieve their American dream. This is a way where they can support their families, have better access to school, buy a home, really improve so many ways of their lives. And so the resources and tools to fund these small businesses at the beginning is very hard to find. So I think one way would be to really support small businesses, to really support the Hispanic community. And so what the census showed is that the majority of the new, 80% of the new businesses created in the last 10 years were Hispanic. So really the Hispanic community is driving the economic development of the US, and we can really help this to become a bigger thing if the resources are put into this market. So I think that's an important issue to get it to improve, and that's something that it's important.
Awesome. Anybody want to go next, or do you want me to call on you guys?
I can go next. So narrowing it down to just 2, I will say probably one without and one within. I think one of the big issues that, I can't say that I can directly work towards, but in my own small way can, which is improving the social safety net. That's really something that is going to benefit a lot of Latinx people. A larger percentage of them are working class or have been working class, most certainly the immigrant community. And a lot of the social safety nets that can support in an increasingly, in a society that's becoming increasingly more difficult to achieve the American dream, social safety nets, some of the social services that can be really beneficial, such as childcare and all those things. So I think it is getting involved in politics, and furthermore, convincing our community members that they need to get involved in it as well. I know, for example, I work a lot with some of the more economically exploited African-American communities through my position with the Contemporary Art Museum. And one of the main things that I hear as far as why they're not voting or getting involved in politics is because they don't actually see any of these policies trickle down. I use that word unironically, but and actually improve the quality of their lives. And I think that probably can be said for a lot of the working class as well. So getting folks involved, getting involved at a local level, and enabling our neighbors to see that getting involved actually can make a material difference that you can see in your everyday lived experience, I think is very important. And then the other issue is a little bit internal, and I will speak specifically for the Mexican American community, but I will say DEI or DEAI issues as far as some of the issues that we have within our own communities related to sexism, machismo, discrimination against folks who are trans or other LGBT folks. These are things that we need to actively be combating within our own communities as well. They are hurtful, and we are in a country where these kind of bigotry is not acceptable and should not be acceptable, but we still are bringing these things from home as well. And I think we need to be actively combating that. And that is something that in my position with, as an educator with my students, these are constant conversations that we are engaging in, because as artists or art appreciators, these are things that are being brought up in the art world as constant things that we have to be talking about, because if we keep ignoring this and trying to push into a world that wasn't exactly made for us, but we're still bringing these issues with us, and there's still a sickness within our own communities, then we're not going to ever really thrive as a community and as a people.
Miriam, if I can build on that, I think one of the internal issues that we need to discuss as a community is how we define what Hispanic, Latino, Latinx, who are the people that are included in those terms, and who are the people that are excluded in those terms. And so I think when we're talking to folks from outside the community, I think that we have stereotypes that we still have to overcome. And I think it's important for us to understand that, Hispanic, Latino, Latinx folks transcend race, transcend nationality, transcend language. And so we also have to be very clear on like what specific parts of the community we're speaking to, because often like we get rolled into this one big conglomerate group of people, which means we actually don't have consensus on certain issues. It means that we don't have understanding and conversations around certain issues. And so I think that that's an internal issue that we need to address, not just here locally, but regionally across the country. And then for me, I have to stay on message. Educator diversity is so critical. I think it's so important for us to model the way for our students, and that happens within classrooms every single day. And so I'll pause there.
Laura or Kevin, you guys want to chime in?
Yeah, well, I wanted to say that we want political representation, and we have to take these issues further. We need to insist on preserving the culture and the language and identity for the second, the third generation. So what's happening is that we have been so focused on immersing into the American culture, into surviving, and to make the American dream, that in many cases, the cost of that is forgetting our roots, forgetting our identity. So it happened that the third generation already not identify itself as a Latino. And so our possibility of making it happen, or of improving our visibility, and also to restore this sense of Latinx or Latino identity, is through preserving our culture, and through preserving our identity, whatever it is. And of course, we need to find expanded ways to identify that somebody who is a third generation could be considered a Latino. Yeah, he could be, of course. It could be. Mixed family could be still somebody who comes from a bicultural family could be considered a Latino. Well, yeah, it depends, but it depends on, there is a part of the job that is ours. It's like to preserve the culture, to preserve the language at home, and to not let it die. And then that will go to schools, and then that will go out there. But there is so much work that we can still do within the circle of our families.
Yeah, so I'll go. I just want to echo what everybody has said, because these are all like great things to focus on. These are really good issues, like DEI, involvement in politics, economic policy, or economic engagement and economic growth in small businesses, educator representation, and the preservation of culture. And when I think about that, it's like, how do we? It's all about getting the community involved, right? And I just want to take those a little bit further. And I think one of the issues that we need to ask ourselves is, or one of the issues with that is, how do we get more of the community involved, because as you said, we're 20% of the population, but how many of those people, once we break it down, you said there's 1% that are involved in the political, political sphere, and then what percentage of that, of the 20% is actually supporting that? So the issue that I'm thinking of hearing all of these is, how do we get more of our community involved with these types of things? And with that is, I think that would be a key into addressing all of these issues, because they're all very important. And that's a good question that we need to ask ourselves. And I think that's something that would be very valuable going forward. And I think just the nature of, I guess, like the work culture and families, everybody feels like you go to work and then you come home, you have to take care of your family. So how do we balance everything and also balance, involvement in the community and furthering those types of goals and issues that we want to achieve for our Latinx community?
Definitely, Kevin. And I think I like the way that Miriam talked about intro and outro work, right? There's work that has to be done inside the community that we need to do for ourselves, but there's also so much that needs to be done from the community outside. And one of those, which not the topic of today's conversation, but just bear with me, I want to go down that rabbit hole for a minute. Edgar brought it up, is the difference between Hispanic, Latino, and Latinx. At the end of the day, the people outside of our community see us one way or the other, right? But we identify how we identify. For many immigrants, especially, we don't even identify as one of those three. We identify as Mexican or Colombian. And so I would just say that it's important to ask yourself how you identify and be comfortable with it if you're a Latino, Latinx, or a Hispanic individual. But then I would say that anybody that's listening from outside the Hispanic community, that we don't all speak Spanish, right? We don't all have the same cultures and languages because we come from very many different countries. I think there's 20 Spanish-speaking countries, at least. And then within those countries, they speak other languages besides Spanish. And so it really gets difficult to like pinpoint exactly what a person should be classified as. And I use the word classified because those terms became labels when the census first started, then updated in 1980s and continue to be updated with Latinx. So I don't know if any of you feel strongly about either one of those or have any insight before we go to our next question.
I do. I have a strong opinion only because, about 4 years ago when I founded the Latinx Education Collaborative, I really liked the term Latinx. I've read the history on it. I understood, depending on what narratives you believe or read, whatever, I like that is an activist term, right? It was designed to include voices that felt unheard in our community, first and foremost. Also, from a marketing communication standpoint, I really like the X because to me, the X is symbolic of the diversity of our community, right? And it allows me to speak of it from a very like beautiful space and say like incredible things about our community and who we are and who we can be and all these things. But I also appreciate this idea of history, right? Because I use the term Latinx to begin with, I did not recognize the backlash that I would receive around the term. And I felt like, once again, I didn't belong, or like maybe it was a little too risky or all these other things. But it helped me also appreciate the history of the words, right? When you talk about the term Hispanic, and that happened in the census of 1970, and Mexican Americans, Puerto Ricans, and Cuban Americans were like, we don't want to be grouped together. We have very different identities and cultures and whatnot. And then I remember seeing an article from 1992 from the New York Times where Latino was an emerging word. And it was, it was yet to be determined whether it was going to stick around or not, and people thought it was a fad, right? And here we are 20 years after that with Latinx, and now I'm hearing the term Latine and Latino and other spaces. I think to your point, Gabriela, it's so important that we ask folks how they identify and how they connect to this culture, and to create space for each other in these conversations, because we all have very different upbringings. We all come from very different places. And so I ask that the community hold space for each other, versus say, like there's this, we are incredibly different as we are a community as well. And so I hope that we hold space for each other.
I'll just add on to that because I thought that was a great insight. And kind of I'm noticing that there's a couple of things about Spanish being this unifying language. I think it's important to preserve as well, but I think it's also important to remember that Spanish is a colonizing language as well, and that so many of our ancestors were not, by no means were they native Spanish speakers. When I fill out the census, I mark indigenous because, my ancestors were Tarahumara. Do I speak that language? Absolutely not. But I also want to point out that the Latino population that is beginning to identify as more American are quite often either Spanglish speakers or native English speakers, and that doesn't make them any less Latino as well. So I think it can be very useful for us to also, especially since we're living in this country, which is going to very soon be a Latin majority country, that from an anthropological perspective and a historical perspective, that Spanish is going to change. English is going to eventually be just as much a Latino language as anything else. And ultimately, they're both colonizing languages. So I am like very pro all of these efforts to preserve and promote our indigenous cultures that Spanish was drowning out as well. So I think ultimately we just have to take a step back sometimes and just be very open-minded, because within the scope of history, these things kind of get swallowed up and we kind of forget, what our recent past was.
Thank you, Miriam. I know that there's lots of conversation that we could have on this subject. So let me go to my next question. Today's conversation is titled Emerging Latinx Leaders, which this group represents. So let's talk about what does it mean to you to be an emerging leader and the personal and professional quality that you have found a part of your effectiveness. Alejandro or Laura, one of you want to start?
Okay, well, I'll start. Well, the first thing is that it made me think the emerging leaders, and I think it's not a matter of age, it's a matter of being ready to be there and to understand what we're talking about. And so in my case, that understanding comes through experience. So after you move to a country in which you don't know anybody and that you have to learn another language and you have to study, you have to find a job, you have to raise children, and you want your children to keep your culture and all the problems that is that when I started to think of helping others, because that bring you certain experience of how to navigate all those difficulties and a sense of learning from your mistakes and to think of what you should do better and to put that at the service of others. And I said that I think that something that's very important for our community is to find a leader that is a reliable person for obvious reasons. In a place like the Boone County where I live, in which we are at most 1,000 Latinos, the problem is that the community is very scattered. And because there is fear, nobody wants to be exposed there and to look for help if that they can put them on risk of, being deported or whatever reason it is. And so for us, the reason to be here is that to try to be reliable. That's one of the things. And to bring a sense of community, to bring unity, to say, well, to put your experiences at the service of others. And of course, that also comes again through promoting that kind, within all the differences that we can have from coming from different countries in which several languages are spoken, there is something that unites us here. And all of us have several, common reasons why you decide to be an immigrant to come here. And so to keep that alive, for example, for me, it's something that is very important within the Latinx community.
Alejandro, and then we'll go to Kevin.
Yeah, the way I see this this question is that I do believe that anyone can be a leader, in leadership, or being a leader means so many things, and it's very individual to us. I also think that everybody has different skills, everybody has different experiences in their lives that has nourish them and prepare them to approach any adversity. So a leader is anyone that has an influence in their community, in their family, whether it is big or it is small. You know, being a leader doesn't mean you have to be the president or a senator. Being a leader can be when somebody is looking for something. For example, in my position, somebody's looking to look for an attorney, or they don't know where to find vaccines. So I think that, you know, being a leader is being helping others and connecting with others, and just use whatever skills you have and put them in for the community and to help your community. So I think that's being a leader.
Kevin, and then Miriam and Edgar.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with Alejandro. A leader can be anybody. A leader is somebody who is willing to help out. A leader is somebody who is open-minded, who's introspective, who's always looking out to be somebody who is looking to help out others, somebody who's humanitarian, looking to improve themselves, improve others around them, just help out their family in any way. And I think an important aspect of that, or something along the lines that I hope that we're kind of helping out here in this forum, we are leaders, but like I said, everybody's leaders. That I think a key to that is, you know, being inspiring and inspiring others. And one way you can do that is inspiring through success. Like Gabriella, you know, you're an author, you're a restaurant owner, you're the president, or you're in charge of the CORTEX. But then I think you do a lot for the community, but even just, you know, visibly and for the community and at whole, like seeing your success is inspiring to others. And I think something like that is, you know, you don't even have to go out of your way to give back to the community or teach others. Just that in general by itself, you're being a leader. And that's what I think.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll send you your monies. Miriam and Edgar?
You know, I found myself as a leader apparently, because I started getting folks asking me to be a part of panels. To be perfectly honest, I never really considered myself a leader prior to that point. But the reason I started getting asked to be a part of panels is there were very few Latinx people who were a part of cultural institutions in St. Louis. And furthermore, because essentially a friend of mine who is also an artist, we were looking for artistic Latinx community within St. Louis. We couldn't find it. And then along with Elisa and a couple of other artists, we co-founded the Latinx Arts Network. So as far as what qualities there are, you need to identify a need, and instead of just merely wishing that there was something that somebody would do something about it, you just need to be willing to step forward and do it. And a lot of times it's just seeking out community or seeking to fill a gap in the community that needs to be filled. And then I think another good quality for a leader is to make space for more people who look like you and have similar experiences to you and backgrounds as you to also step into that role, and for it to be just a little bit easier. So somebody gave me a voice to be a leader, so I can turn around and look at other, you know, Mexican American girls and boys or whomever and say, you know, I really like the qualities that you have, so let me invite you to be a mentee, or let me invite you to be a part of this student panel or this other panel, and essentially to turn around and give voice to other folks who are probably not expecting it or didn't even think of themselves as leaders as well.
Gracias, Miriam. Edgar?
Yeah, no, you know, I think we're wrestling within our organizations around what does it mean to be a Latino, Latinx, Hispanic leader, and what are the qualities that we bring that are part of our community, right? What are those values that we bring to leadership that are aligned with who we are as a people? And so I've been reading a lot around Juana Ordaz. Juana Ordaz is a activist in the United States from Nicaragua. My parents are also from Nicaragua. And so it's been really interesting to read the 10 Principles of Latino Leadership that she wrote. And how do we actually lead from a place of cultural, I'm losing the word here, but affirmation? What are the differences that we can bring to the table when leading as Latinos? What are the nuances and what are the ways that we can lean into the power of our community when we lead, and maybe not adopt other ways of leading, right? And so I've been thinking about that, and also leading sometimes means like taking uncomfortable positions, right? It means pushing the community forward in certain ways that may not be appreciated or loved by everyone as well. And so I think that's when it gets really difficult to be an emerging leader or a leader in general, is that sometimes you have to take positions that are not the norm within your community, and then also build relationship capital around that as well. And so I am thinking a lot about what it means to be a Latinx leader, and how I lean into my cultural gifts and my ancestry, and bringing those into the spaces that I lead in.
I love that, Edgar, leading into a place of cultural affirmation. And we've been talking now about personal and professional qualities. You all mentioned some that have made you an emergent leader. And then all of the discussion around the importance of leadership surrounds us every day. So what are your thoughts on how can we and our community now identify and nurture the youth and future leaders going forward? How do we pass that torch? And I'll start with Laura and then Miriam.
Yeah, well, I think that first of all, we need to find natural leaders. So, okay, so I teach Spanish at the University of Missouri, and I realize that I get students who are learning Spanish and they are Latinos and they don't speak Spanish and they want to keep the culture alive. And they're very excited about learning Spanish. And then you find people here and there, and that happened to me when I was teaching music too. And then you see they are natural leaders to me. So people who step out and say, well, beyond all the difficulties that we went through as immigrants, I want to keep these. And I want to identify myself as a Latino, and I want to keep going. And they are natural resources. I mean, like, this is wonderful. Now, there are things that programs, for example, there is a program that we are supporting an extension, Boone County Extension, called Juntos program, and that we are extension is trying to implement in schools in Missouri. It has been successful in other states, and that we want to implement this, and that we're supporting them. And that the thing is that they have a program for kids in middle school and high school to develop leadership. And so these kids are accompanied throughout their studies at the high school and the middle school, and that they develop the main goal of the program is to improve retention, and then to help them to walk through college studies or university studies, and that they do a great job in supporting leadership. And that is something that we don't have in Missouri, but I think it would be wonderful. I believe in these type of programs.
I will say one thing about the youth is I have been continually impressed with the fact that they seem to be, forgive this old-fashioned term, but like hip to what's going on and how, you know, the world should be changing into the future, sometimes more than my own generation. But I will say nurturing, you know, future leaders is oftentimes a matter of taking the time to mentor and invest in people, and also giving them a platform and giving them opportunity. I mean, those are the things that I feel that I can do the best. And also I take it as a responsibility to educate the Black and Brown youth that come under my care as an educator or come through my programs, and to educate them just on a broad basis about how we should treat people, how we should care for one another within communities. You know, how should we should be rejecting, you know, some of the exploitive practices that the, you know, essentially the white supremacy that came over here from Europe. And a lot of times we just kind of accept as the de facto way of the world. So not only are we nurturing future leaders to take their place at the table in the United States, I hope that they're willing to dismantle it and completely reconfigure what that table of power and capital looks like, so that we are able to be the leaders of a future American society that is kinder and is more willing to take care of communities of all colors.
Very good point, Miriam. What about you, Kevin? And then we'll go to Edgar.
Yeah, so I think I'm gonna again mirror with what Miriam said, but it does seem like the youth these days are like, you know, very hip, or they're very like quote unquote woke, or however we can describe it. And I think a part of that is kind of the give and take with social media. I think it's well documented, like some of the issues with social media, but I think over the past year or year and a half or 2 years, you can see that these like trends of engagement, or just having that availability of, you know, social movements and issues around the world. And something else that comes to mind is global warming. I think that a lot of the younger community is very aware of that, and they're, you know, entering like college now, and they're going into fields that would help out with global warming, or they're going into fields that will help out their community. They're very aware of those types of things. And I think that kind of staying the course, or nurturing that, as we said, and, you know, being a leader, this is another of the theme of the day, just being that example that, you know, this is like, just keep going and you guys have got it, but then also being an example within ourselves, and being reaching out to our older generation, ourselves, and then generations beyond, and just building on that community and sense of who we are as people and as a community, and, you know, staying engaged. Like I think if we continue going down that course, and you know, nurture what we have, and our really build on those things that I think our youth are very aware of, like I think we can get to a really good place.
Gracias, Kevin. Edgar, what about you? How can we nurture future leaders?
You know, actually, I've been thinking about this, and I want to reference Adriana's comment around, I think it's important for these emerging leaders to listen to the voices of older generations. What are their viewpoints? I actually agree 110% with that comment. In fact, I was thinking about my own role in that with our younger generations as well, right? I'm in my mid-30s. You know, I don't know if I'm an emerging leader or not, but at the end of the day, I'm there, right? And so there are definitely younger folks, younger people doing incredible work. And so something that I found in my own youthful inexperience and like exuberance was this idea that like I was the first. And I think that that's a narrative that we have a lot within our community. Like I was the first to do this, or this was the first idea. Often we forget that we are building on top of the work of our ancestors, right? And so it is powerful for us to invite not just our future leaders, but our established leaders in these conversations, and invite them into these things. And so that's something that I actually strive to do as an emerging leader, as an older leader, as a younger leader, somewhere in between, as a sandwich leader, is this idea that we have to maintain space for folks who have done the work prior to us. And then we also have a responsibility to listen to youth, right? I think one of my bigger concerns within our community, and actually communities in general, is this concept of gatekeeping, right? Whether we're gatekeeping identity or gatekeeping power or opportunities. I think that can be really easily done within our community, specifically since we have a smaller pool of leaders, so to speak. And so I think about, how do we open those up? How do we open doors? How do we build trust, right? In that, you know, by inviting people into these conversations, and by inviting people into leadership in these opportunities, that all we're doing is just multiplying power versus consolidating it.
Very true, Edgar. What about you, Alejandro? I may be wrong, but I do believe you are our youngest person on the panel. and closer to those future leaders that we're talking about. So what are some things that you think we should be doing more of as a community?
I think that the best way I can answer this is through my life experience. And so what I would say is mentorship. It's really important. And I have noticed this because moving here to St. Louis, and maybe I was just very lucky, but the group of people that I met have been so helpful to my development. I think that I wouldn't be here without the people that has helped me through these years to, you know, become more comfortable with doing lives or doing videos like this, or go and talk to the governor and tell him that he needs to do better work for the LGBTQ plus community in St. Louis, or, you know, do so many things that I just didn't know that I was going to be able to do. So I think mentorship and empowering others is the way to do it. And, you know, so I looking at the list in the call, I've seen that a few faces that I've met before that have given past opportunities from them to me, so that I was able to do those things. And so, you know, now that I've lived that, I will lead with that example. And now I will, any opportunity that comes to me, or any resource, or just not or anything that I can do for anybody else, I will be just so happy to do it, because I was you know, I was the recipient of kindness like that. So I think that was just so great to experience. And I think that's just one of the ways that we can help our emerging leaders.
Thank you, Alejandro. And I know we're gonna start to wrap up pretty soon. So I just wanna say that I'm so grateful for this opportunity to talk to you with Miriam, Edgar, Laura, Alejandro, and Kevin, and grateful to all of our audience members. Gerardo and Veronica also have been amazing hosts and organizers of this event, the MU Cambio Center, and of course, our sponsor, Liuna and Sal Valadez, driving that. Can we go around one more time and share with today's audience where they can find you online? Where can others learn more about you? And then also, what motivates you to continue your work? Because I know you guys have sleepless nights, late nights, early mornings, many hats to wear. So where can people find you, and what motivates you to continue your work? Let's start with you, Kevin, since you seem so excited.
You had me at the sleepless nights. Yeah, so you can find out more about specifically the SHIP St. Louis, the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, by going to ship-stl.org. I'll put that in the chat afterwards, but I guess, you know, there's no easy way for me to sum, or I guess there is an easy way. That's the only way I can sum up what inspires me, but it just brings me a lot of joy to like go into a high school and, you know, show them a presentation about some type of engineering project or some type of science project. One of a very simple science experiment that we do is we get liquid nitrogen, which is extremely cold, and we dip little puffy Cheetos in them, and then you eat them and you can see like smoke come out, and just like the joy on high schoolers' face and, you know, elementary school students' faces, you know, that's just very, I mean, it's just very fulfilling, and you get to see that. But in terms of other things with professional development that we do, we focus on developing engineers in the area. A lot of the people that are here, I don't think I ever mentioned, but I'm originally from Chicago, so I moved to St. Louis because of Boeing, and I didn't really know there was really a Latinx community here until maybe I was already here for like 2 years or something. So being in our society, in this society or this club, you know, being a space where a lot of engineers who are not originally from Missouri, being that first initial contact of like camaraderie, or being able to show them, and me networking with other societies and being here, we can point them to other community, like Latinx communities that only, I think that brings them joy to be able to connect with somebody like themselves and being able to then take it a step further, and us going out and helping the community service, going out and helping with the food drives that were very important to our community during the COVID crisis. You know, that's everything is just inspiring to yourself, and you get to, you know, make the world a better place a little bit at a time. And I think that's what keeps me excited about it.
Great. Laura, what about you? Where can people find out more about you and the work that you do? And then also what keeps you motivated?
Well, I'm doing the work with the Boone County Extension Council, and well, my email is on the left side. What motivates me is to see the youngest. He like I mean, to me, I have a lot of admiration for this generation. People who are now in high school, they're entering university, and I see more diversity. I mean, if we compare, I mean, during the Hispanic Heritage Month, right? And then even you enter into Netflix and you see, well, Heritage Month movies. And that didn't happen 10 years ago. And so I see an improvement. I see that the numbers are growing for our population. I believe that the technology helping us to reach out, to make this available for, and I see improvements, and I believe in this, and I actually believe in a better future, and this is what inspires me.
Gracias, Laura. What about you, Edgar, and then Alejandro?
You can find us at Latinx Education Collaborative or Revolución Educativa. We are on all the socials everywhere. And so what keeps me motivated? You know, similar to Kevin, I absolutely love going into schools. And every time I walk into a school, I see a strong community of Latino students. And I think about the experiences that I had growing up. I was born in Miami, Florida, where, you know, I was Nicaragüense. I moved to Spokane, Washington, where I became Mexican/Hispanic. And then in my time in Missouri, like I finally used the term Latino. And so I think about all these experiences along the way as I was growing up, and how even 20, 30 years later, like those are experiences that a lot of us still go through. And so I think about my responsibility to our students, to making sure that they don't face similar challenges in the future, and for them to be proud of who they are and where they come from. And so that's what keeps me motivated. It's part of my journey. It's part of my own healing work. But that's our future is in the students. And so as long as they're around, I'll be around.
Gracias, Edgar. Alejandro, and then Miriam.
Yes, you can find me if you're looking to connect to improve the economic development of the region. You can find my information at the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of Metropolitan St. Louis's website. Also, if you're looking to listen to a podcast and that covers many different topics, I started one with Gabriella. It's called Auténtico Podcast, and we talk about different topics regarding the Hispanic community. So that's another way that you can find me, and also on LinkedIn and Facebook. So that's some ways. What keeps me motivated, I think, is just thinking that the little things that I get to do during my life hopefully will create some change, so that the generations that are coming don't have to go through the same hurdles that I had to. So, you know, that's one little thing that keeps me like, okay, let's just go ahead and do this today. But that's it.
One little thing for you is one big thing to a lot of people. Miriam?
Yeah, so mine is going to be well, let me say, yeah, where you can find me. So my email is in the chat. You can find me at camstool.org, which is the Contemporary Art Museum, St. Louis. You can also find out about the work that we're doing with Latinx Arts Network at latinxstl.com. And we're on all of the social media. Also, you can find me on Instagram by just typing in my name, and you will find a profile where I'm beginning to put my own artwork as well. As far as what motivates me, pretty much what Edgar and Alejandro said, it's thinking about my own personal experiences. You know, I attended the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, And in my cohort of 14 grad students for the Art History, Theory, and Criticism department, I was the only Latina that was represented. And there was only one African-American person in the program. And when you looked at the other programs that were in the MA programs, there was another one Latinx person and one African-American person. And you look at that and you start to feel, I think everybody who goes into grad school, for example, feels a really intense imposter syndrome. But for those of us that come from Black and Brown communities, especially when we are the first or some of the first in multiple generations or extended family to attend school at that level, that does not help your imposter syndrome. So I was just thinking to myself how wonderful it would have been if there had been somebody who could have said, I know where you're coming from and you're okay and you deserve to be here. And that is just one example from a lifetime of feeling as the one representative. Why am I here? How am I here? These people don't understand my background and some of the particular barriers I experience, or some of the benefits that my presence comes. And so I think for me, what pushes me forward is thinking, what is the kind of leader or mentor that little Miriam would have loved to have had and could have really benefited from having? And then I strive to be that person.
Thank you, Miriam. That's great. What would the little Miriam have wanted? I think we can all ask ourselves that question and come up with 1,000 solutions, right? And so that really ends the panel piece of our discussion. I'd like to now open it up for questions from the audience. And we already do have one from Melissa, who asked, how can I be a better ally? So I don't know who would like to go first. Anybody have any thoughts?
You know, I have thoughts. I always have thoughts. So one way that you can be a better ally, and this is for in any minority group or oppressed group whatsoever. You can be applied across the board. Look at the position of power or the position of privilege or the space that you are occupying. Consider if it could be better served by stepping back and allowing a person who has a voice, or giving voice to a person from one of those oppressed or minority groups, stepping back and letting them have it.
Thank you. So important. Anybody else want to add something?
I will add, write checks to Black and Brown led organizations. They appreciate every dollar that they can get.
Alejandro, Laura, or Kevin, any response to Alyssa's question about how to be a better ally?
Yeah, so something that Miriam said, I think it's perfect. Is not only necessarily going to be helping, if you're an advocate, it's not only going to be helping the Latinx community, it's going to help all minorities. So I think, advocating in many ways that you can, it's going to be important, and it's going to be so relevant to always advocate for equality. One minority, if it's not being treated well, it may trickle down to years later to other minorities. So I think just advocating for the many issues that we talk about, for example, language access or disenfranchisement on voting, calling to your elected representatives to do not pass restrictive voting laws, I think it's also going to be important. So there are so many ways that you can engage and be an ally. It depends on, your level of passion that you want to be helping the community, but there are so many ways.
Gracias, Alejandro. There's also a question in the chat from Avelina asking, how do we get more engaged in areas that have been historically white? Code switching, etc. Kevin or Laura, do you all have any thoughts?
Yeah,
or anybody?
Yeah, I think that's a challenge. I mean, when you're in a big city, you have so much work already done there, and of course, more databases there. When you're in an area where the community has gathered because they have minorities and there is not actually institutional support, and there is no money to support that because the numbers are not considered enough to that is where the problem comes. I think that the first step is to reach out the community to make internal work. Without that internal work, without reaching out and making us stronger, we cannot go out. And so that needs more work. Like, this is what I believe, the internal part.
Gracias, Laura. Kevin? Did you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I agree. Doing that type of work, I guess, being here and networking is a good step like that. Network with everybody in your area, network with something that Alejandro brought up before is, finding a mentor, networking with a mentor, somebody who's been there before, because we do feel like we are the first of something, but there's somebody else that built this for us, and now we're here. And so just building on that and networking and finding a mentor and being able to engage through that, it's a good step.
Yeah, I would also add that, and I'm not saying this lightly because I am the worst networker and I'm really weird about asking for help, but it really does make a difference when you get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? So I know it's hard for us specifically. Some tricks I found is go with a friend, right? Bring someone as your buddy that could go to the networking event with you, and you have a goal of how many people you want to meet. Put yourself on purpose in unknown or uncomfortable situations so that you start to understand how things work. I kind of think about it as being on the golf course. There's a lot of rules on the golf course, right? You can't wear jeans, you can't walk in front of people's putts, you can't talk while they speak. But if you're not a golfer, you don't know that those things exist. And so that happens in everyday interactions. There are things that we just don't know because we don't know. And so I would just challenge and invite all of you to ask for help, to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And this panel is a great example of your first person that you could call out to if you ever need anything or have a question. I think everybody here would be very willing to support you and help you, at least point you in the right direction. The other thing is we don't have to know everything. We know people that know people, right? So, I mean, when Miriam first started the Latinx Arts Network, she didn't just go out and do it by herself, although I'm sure she probably could have. She reached out to key people in the community because she knew that she needed someone that would do outreach and that could handle the social media and that could already had a relationship with the community to get that started. So those are my 2 cents. I know that there's another question in the chat from Melissa saying, I work in state government. How can we do a better job of recruiting Hispanic talent to our workforce? And I'll open that up to anybody that wants to answer that.
I would say it's important to understand how you are hiring, in understanding that you need to level the ground for applicants and how you have your job postings out there. One example is, are you making it equitable? Do you have 5 years of experience, 10 years of experience? There are going to be students that are from low-income backgrounds that may not have the opportunity to have an internship, because for internships you need to be paying for school, you need to be paying for books, you need to be paying for so many things, and you don't have the luxury to do an internship and get experience because you have to be working at some other place to feed yourself. So taking a look at how you can make these job openings that you have equitable for everybody, and understanding that so many of these job openings that they may be out there are going to be alienating a lot of the population because of this exact reasons. So I would say take a look at your recruitment process. What are things that you can change and improve, and change them?
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback off of what Alejandro said, because this is hiring for research is something that I've been doing at my museum. And really it's just putting a finer point on a couple of things that he said. So first thing, change your expectations for what kind of experience they already have, and really commit yourself to doing a lot of more on the job training. Instead of saying, we expect you to already know how to do this, say, actually, we're changing our standards. You have these wonderful qualities that maybe originally we weren't looking for, but these are amazing. And then we are going to train you how to do that. So really just as and this is for really any sort of organization or corporation, just really invest to doing a lot of professional development, especially at entry level or, managerial positions. And I think the other thing is just change the places that you are looking. Maybe don't go just on Indeed.com or US.gov, but maybe seek out some other places where people are looking for work, or maybe physically going to places to recruit instead of relying on some of the traditional methods, which a lot of groups of people don't have access to for various reasons.
I'd like to add just a thought. So we deal with this in education a lot, around this idea of recruiting more Latino teachers, right? Like we just need to recruit them. We just need to recruit them. And often what gets missed in that conversation is the nuance of like, what are you doing to retain Latino educators? What are you doing to retain our community in these spaces? And so I'm hoping that in addition to your recruitment strategies and these like very good strategies here that have been presented, you're also critically thinking about what it means for our community to show up in your space, and are we going to feel like we belong? That is vital to this, because I will tell you, in education, Latino teachers tend to spend like no more than 2 years, not because they have terrible salaries and all these other things, but because they feel isolated and alone in these spaces. And so they don't just leave the school that they're in, they leave the profession altogether. And so I would assume that in any other environment, in any other industry, it's the same, right? If I am an aspiring leader, I have hustle, I have energy, I'm proud of being Latino, all these things. And then I walk into an environment that asks me to remove that version of myself or those important things in myself, you're not going to retain them. And you're also going to create a whole network of people who are like, we ain't going to work there. And so I hope that as you're thinking about recruiting to the workforce, that you also think about what are you doing to keep folks that are already in this space, and how are you listening to those folks as well.
Laura or Kevin, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think that sense of belonging, absolutely necessary. Absolutely necessary. And this is true also for school retention at any level, at the job, at the workplace, everywhere. That sense of belonging is important. Sense that you belong somewhere, that you are well accepted. Yes, definitely. I agree with Edgar. Yeah.
Yeah, Laura, I think that sense of belonging is very true in many organizations, not just when we speak about Hispanic, Latin, or Latinx employees, because what often is not there is the background piece, right? That's going to keep that employee engaged. And that could mean making sure that you have an employee resource group that supports them, or that you have a training manual in the language that they speak, or that you have, other opportunities for them to be able to celebrate and to be a part of the organization. So at this time, I'd like to open it up. If there's any other questions, I would say go ahead and unmute yourself. Veronica, you can yell at me later. If not, Veronica, do you want to come on and close us out? Oh, I do see another question. It's from Sandy, who's saying, as a medical doctor in my country, which is Mexico, I immigrated for my husband's work, and I'm improving my English and preparing to take the exams and legal procedures to practice here in this country. I would like to know, how can I volunteer and help the community? I know you guys have answers for this one.
Yeah, I'm going to come from left field here and say, Sandy, you're doing enough. Like, we need more, Latino doctors, and we need more folks like that. And so I think, Gabriella, you mentioned this at the top of the conversation, like we all wear multiple hats, right? We feel compelled to be involved in multiple organizations and represent and speak on behalf of our community and these things. And then I also think it's important that to be comfortable with what we're doing is enough. Sometimes being Latino in a space that doesn't welcome you or isn't ready to accept you in that space is enough, right? And so I just want to caution on this idea of what can I do more? What can I do more? Like, being good at what you do already is enough in order to help support our community. I will also say that there's plenty of organizations out there that would love for you to serve on their boards, or volunteer with their committees. And so it's a matter of tapping into your network. It's as easy as a Facebook post or Instagram post and being like, I just want to get out and involved. People will tap into you. Letting people know that you're available is that first step in getting involved and included in some of these conversations.
Sandy, I would say I don't know where you are located, whether it's Kansas or which part of Missouri. But what I would say is think on the missions or topics that you're passionate about, whether it is helping kids to learn Spanish, or like I found myself doing, which is food access for people with immunocompromised diseases. So think of those things that you're passionate about, because that's something that's really going to help you in defining where you want to volunteer your time. And so once you think of those things, go to Google and maybe find an organization that, a nonprofit that helps in that. If you're in St. Louis, I would like to connect with you, and I can help you connect with any nonprofit or organization that is, I can help you just find your way.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Kevin?
I was going to add, I think everybody's putting it in this chat, but Sandy, if you are in St. Louis, Casa de Salud is a clinic that specializes in helping out the international community and people who speak of several different languages. I think they're always looking for volunteers there, whether or not you volunteer in a doctor sense. It says that you're still working on getting all of your medical documents in order, but I'm sure they would be happy to help there. I would also add on, there's all of these organizations that we're a part of that are helping out with the community, the Latinx community directly. I would say if you're looking to just get involved with volunteering in general, just like dipping your feet in, there's several, like Alejandro said, you can Google something and just Google like volunteering. And one thing that you can do is, like volunteering at a park and helping to clean up, things around the area. And I think just getting involved with those types of things and kind of getting out there, like wets your feet, so to speak, to be able to volunteer with other things and other societies.
Perfect, thank you, Kevin. Veronica, I'll bring you up and have you wrap us up.
It looks like she's frozen. I know she was having issues earlier and logged on a second device.
Gerardo, are you ready to wrap us up?
Sure, I'll go ahead. Well, first of all, thank you to each of you. This has been an amazing panel conversation. I have learned personally a lot, and from each of you. Thank you, Gabriella, for moderating this session and helping everybody to bring the best in the questions that were being addressed. So thank you again so much. So, well, Gabriella, again, thank you so much for this session on the emerging leaders. And each of you, indeed, you're young and a very emerging leader. So thank you. So we appreciate also everyone who participated and who joined us, and for giving us your time to listen. And to be a better ally is this step too. So you have been a better ally to join us today. So thank you so much. And so thanks again to our official sponsor, Leona, and to each one of the LCIM organizers. So that's UMKC, Institute for Human Development, Alianzas, the Boone County Extension Council, the Hispanic Leaders of St. Louis, and New Cambio Center, and Extension Community Arts Program. So to each one of them, thank you. Just to save the time, I will not mention everybody's names, but I'm really grateful to each one again of the presenters for your time. Also, want to invite you to come and join us on November the 6th, which is our last series on this LCIM. So it's titled Latinx Art in Oral Traditions. So please join us for there will be, talks and conversations about the Spanish and the Portuguese speaking world, and folk tales, storytelling, myths, legends, and puppetry. So Monica Leo from the Eulene Spiegel puppet troupe will be speak about the process to create her show called Tío Conejo, which is Uncle Rabbit, an international collaboration based on folk tales from Mexico and Puerto Rico. And also from UMSL, University of Missouri St. Louis, Professor Maria Balog will join with her and we'll be speaking about the magical realism in poetry traditions. So again, November the 6th will be from 2 to 3:30 p.m. Please check our website and join us. So thanks again for this wonderful presentation and thank you for all of you, your insights and your knowledge. So thanks and we'll see you again. Thank you again, Gabriela and everyone. Have a great rest of the evening. Bye-bye.
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.